Buongiorno. I've always loved looking at maps of places I've visited or might visit. And in following this interest, I've noticed towns near our Monte Carlo home with some unusual names, including Malocchio and Femmina Morta. Malocchio means evil eye. Femmina Morta means dead female. Finding these has prompted me to search for other towns in Italy that could rival these two for their peculiarity. I'm Paul Spadoni, a citizen of both Italy and the United States, with homes in both places, and I love to share the things I've learned about Italy and Italian culture. And I love living a dual life split between these two amazing countries. I also love God, my wife, and my family. But back to the topic of today, cities and neighborhoods in Italy with unusual names. I quickly found a few that were mentioned in an Italian newspaper article, including Strango la Galli, Strangle the Roosters, and Bel Sedere, Nice Butt. The article also named some unusual but complimentary places such as Donna Dolce, Sweet Woman, Buon Riposo, Good Rest, and Occhio Bello, Beautiful Eye. However, many of the other names in the newspaper article were, in my opinion, quite ordinary, barely deserving of mention. There was Capricota, Cooked Goat, Gola Secca, Dry Throat, Poveromo, Poor Man, and others of that nature, but I wanted names even more unusual, so I started searching on my own. Since every little neighborhood in Italy has a name, I'm sure there are some strange ones that I may never find. One must enlarge the map to such a degree that only a very small area of land appears, and it would take weeks, maybe months, to scroll across the entire country. I've only given this project an hour of time, but I've still found a few fascinating names. Actually, it started earlier, a couple of years ago, when I hiked a trail near Sapri named Sentiero Apprezzami L'Asino, which Google translates as Appreciate My Ass Trail. What? Actually, there's a logical and interesting story behind the trail. It may not be literally true, but it goes like this. The trail was on a steep side hill that dropped down to the sea below. It was so narrow in places that if two travelers with donkeys met going in opposite directions, it was impossible for either donkey to turn around. In this case, apprezzami meant to appraise the value of instead of to appreciate. The traveler with the least value asino, donkey, had to let his donkey slide off the hillside into the sea. It's terrible to picture this scenario, and I hope it's not really true, but it makes more sense than having a trail called Appreciate My Ass. On the same vacation, we drove up into the hills above Sapri and passed by Caponi and Varco delle Chiappe, Big Butts, and Crack of the Butts. There are also towns called simply Chiappa and Chiappe, Butt and Butts. Now, one reason for the strange names is that Italians over the centuries have been very close to nature and fairly earthy in their sensibilities. Imagine growing up in a little farmhouse with nine brothers and sisters sharing rooms and 25 cousins living on either side of you, and then raising and breeding farm animals. You get used to observing many body parts and bodily functions, so referring to them may not seem so out of place. Suffice it to say, Italy in the past was not Victorian England, so names referring to body parts are not uncommon. In fact, there's even a little community in Tuscany named La Vagina. There's also the Ponte delle Tette in Venezia, and this is another place where I found an explanation for an unusual name. Sources say that the Ponte bridge was historically a place for topless prostitutes to solicit clients. However, Venezia has another bridge with a saintlier name, the Ponte Ca di Dio, House of God. Fellow members of a Facebook group helped me to add to my list. We found Purgatorio in Sicily, Troia in Apulia, Troina in Sicily also, Scanacapri, slaughter goats in Campania, Sesso in Reggio Emilia, Omo Morto, dead man near Firenze, and Bastardo in Umbria. My favorite of those sent to me was Ramazzano le Pulci. They sweep up fleas. There's also the well-known but strangely named airport Malpensa in Milano. Mal would be a shortened version of male, bad or evil. So Google translates male pensa as thinks badly, but deep L lists it as evil thinks. Either way, it doesn't seem like an encouraging or welcoming name for an airport. In the province of Rieti, there's a little neighborhood named Katsokia. Put that word into Google Translate, and it gives you this translation. That's not exactly a literal meaning, because the root word katso can serve many purposes. It's kind of like the F word in English. It's an all-purpose term with many variations that can mean messed up, crappy, crazy, foolish, or just be an expletive muttered like the words darn or damn, or the F word. Besides body parts, God, the devil, and the afterlife have also inspired some interesting names. Venezia has a Corte di Cristo, the Court of Christ, and in the province of Perugia is a town named Casa del Diavolo, Devil's Home. It's interesting to note that this town has a church named Chiesa di Casa del Diavolo, Church, the House of the Devil. Only 16 minutes away is a street named Via del Cielo, the Way of Heaven, although one can see from aerial photos that it's very small and narrow. Perhaps that's in recognition of Matthew 7:14, which reads, "Small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life." In the view from Google Maps, I can't tell if it has a gate or not, but the road is definitely narrow. Meanwhile, the city of Firenze has 3 connected streets in the same neighborhood dealing with the afterlife: Via dell'Inferno, Via del Purgatorio, and Via del Limbo. Nearby San Miniato, smaller than Firenze, has only a vicolo, an alley, dell'Inferno, whereas Napoli has a whole valley, Valle dell'Inferno. Judging solely by the numbers, it's much easier to find a pathway to hell than it is to find the road to heaven. Perhaps that may be a good lesson to us all. We should seek the narrow road to heaven and not get sidetracked by the many, many roads, alleys, and valleys that lead to Inferno. And that concludes my sermon for the day. Dio vi benedica. God bless you. Ragazzi, ci vediamo alla prossima.